Hey, no sleep. This is where you're supposed to post creepy shit, right? Well, something happened last night at the gym and I think it qualifies. Just a bit of background. I made it my New Year's resolution to get back in shape, so I've been hitting the gym regularly since early December. I figured there was no harm getting a head start, lol. Unfortunately, I've had to work crazy hours this week, and by the time I get off work, the gym's already closed. That changed last night when I was driving home and saw the lights were on and there was a sign saying, "Now open 24/7. I overheard someone complaining the other day about having to deal with nighttime vandalism lately, so I think the company figured it was cheaper to pay a minimum wage employee to cover the night shift than it was to hire a security guard. So anyways, I pulled up to the gym, grabbed my bag from the trunk, and headed inside. I almost turned around because there was no one at the front desk and literally no one in the gym either. But, half the fluorescents were on and there was music playing. So I figured the employee was on a break or something and I went to the locker room to get changed. I only noticed the mess when I went to start my warm-up. The free weights were all over the place. Those little bolts you use to lock in the weight on the machines were scattered on the ground. The yoga mats had come undone. The trash bins, although empty, were on their sides. The cleaning bottles had all been knocked over, and one of them had leaked all over a treadmill. And there were jump ropes and shit hanging from the pull-up bars. It just looked like the gym had been opened all day, and the employee had said, "fuck it," to the idea of tidying up before closing time, basically. I jumped on an elliptical and put on my jams, knowing full well my phone battery was about to die any minute now. If I had planned on my little gym excursion, I obviously would have charged my phone before leaving work. Oh well, woulda, coulda, shoulda. So there I was, working out like it wasn't anybody's business, letting my mind wander. I noticed the lights would flicker from time to time, but I didn't really think much of it. Fluorescent flicker. That's just what they do. I was about 15 minutes into my workout when my battery finally died, and I was pulled out of my headspace. At least there was music playing, some hip-hop song I've never heard before. I moved to the weight machines, put the bolts in place, and started lifting. Suddenly the song skipped and started right back at the beginning. I quirked a brow, but then I saw the old CD player in the corner. That explained everything. A couple minutes later, at the same point in the song, it skipped again and restarted. CD must have been scratched, I figured. When it restarted for a third time, I had had enough. I jogged over and skipped to the next track. I could have sworn I heard something in the silence between songs that sounded like a whimper, but I convinced myself it was just a side effect of a creepy empty gym in the early hours of the morning. That was my mistake. I went back to lifting weights, started getting really into the song, and suddenly it started skipping and replaying the same line over and over again. Radio up, radio off, radio up, radio off, radio up, radio off, radio up, radio... The power went out, but only for a second. To be honest, it scared me half to death. I nearly dropped the bar I was holding. The high-pitched shriek that accompanied the outage didn't help my nerves. And no, it hadn't come from me. As soon as the lights came back on, and since the music had stopped, I was able to really hear the whimpers I thought I'd heard earlier. They drew my attention to the supply closet near the main desk. I don't know why I grabbed a weapon because really it was clearly someone crying, and it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out who it was and why they were hiding. The mess in the gym? The missing employee? Obviously, the vandals came in and spooked the person working the front desk. The power outage was just a coincidence. The CD skipping was just shitty old technology doing its thing. And still, I grabbed a free weight just in case. I approached the door, gripped the weight, and loudly asked, "You okay in there?" The whimpering stopped immediately, like the person on the other side was trying to conceal their presence. Kind of too late for that, buddy. I shrugged and opened the door, only to find, well, exactly what I thought I'd find. She looked like a student, early 20s, maybe even 19. She had an employee t-shirt and was curled up in a little ball in the far corner of the room, shaking like a leaf and cheeks stained with dry tears. She flinched when she saw me, and I quickly took a step back. I tossed the weight aside and lifted my hands to show her I meant no harm. I asked if she was okay, and she kind of just stared at me for a few seconds, before she got this glint of recognition in her eyes. She got up briskly, sped past me but grabbed my arm as she did, tugged, and said, "We have to get out of here now." She didn't seem all that shaken for someone who'd been crying seconds before, like she had this really intense, authoritative voice to her. I couldn't help but follow her. I tried to explain that I needed to change, but she wouldn't hear it. She only stopped when I pointed out I'd left my car keys in my locker. Her confidence waned. I heard her whisper there was no time, but she looked like she was weighing things in her mind. Okay, she decided. We'll go together, but in and out. We have to leave before it comes back. The word "it" caught my attention. It was a really weird choice of words to describe a vandal. As she led me to the locker room, I pressed her on it, and her anxiety became even more apparent. I can't remember what exactly I said to convince her to talk to me, or what she said verbatim, but she did eventually open up as I was trying to get my lock open. The gist of it is this. She was working the late shift, obviously. Things were going well at first. At worst, a few creeps made passes at her, but they knocked it off once she threatened to revoke their gym memberships. It was about 11 p.m., and she hadn't seen a customer in over an hour. She was bored, so she started tidying up, washing the machines, putting the weights back in place, that kind of stuff. She was dusting the top of one of the machines when she heard one of the chest bars crashing to the ground. She figured the last person who used it hadn't locked it properly and put the clamps back in place. A few minutes later, the bar fell again. This time, she put it off to the side and made a mental note to tell the manager the equipment was broken. As she was rounding up more weights, she said she felt a breath behind her neck, and, thinking it was some creeper who had been hiding out in the locker room, turned on her heels and cursed at him. Except there was no one there. The weight room was empty. That's when things really started getting creepy. She was on high alert, noticing every sound and jumping at any movement. As the minutes ticked by, things started falling. She was sure someone was running around making a mess and then dodging out of sight. She started looking at the mirrors to try and catch them in the act. See, the mirrors cover 3 walls, so you can see most of the room just by looking at one wall. She caught a silhouette standing on the opposite side of the gym. She described it as being dark, but without much detail to it. Like a shadow, I remember her saying. Scared but convinced she'd finally caught him in the act, she turned around sharply, and as she did, she saw a weight being thrown across the floor, with nothing doing the throwing. The figure in the mirror? It was gone. Suddenly, as though all hell broke loose, all the equipment started shaking and stuff started falling all over the place. Weights flew past her, bottles of cleaner hit her in the back. She ducked into the nearby supply closet and tried to hide. She could hear objects pelting against the door, but everything inside the closet was quiet. She then heard a loud knock, and all then went quiet. She sat there in horror for a few minutes before she mustered the courage to leave, but something was blocking the door. She couldn't see very well out of the crack, but it looked like one of the weight machines had been dragged all the way to the closet and had been dropped there. Cue to her waiting in horror with the song stuck on repeat. And me, around midnight, entering the gym. Now I've got to be honest, there was nothing blocking the door to the supply closet when I got there. I don't know if she imagined it or if it got moved or what. That's why I was a little skeptical, and why I was reluctant to believe her story. It seemed a lot more likely a bunch of vandals had gotten her good. I was ready to dismiss the whole thing, but as we left the locker room and headed towards the front door, I heard the CD player coming on. Radio up, radio off, and then the deafening crash of breaking glass. I ran into the gym, only to find every single floor-to-ceiling mirror shattered into pieces, with not a soul in sight who could have done it. Not even some hooligans running away like thieves in the night. The employee walked over and put a hand on my shoulder, urging me to leave. I wanted to, I really did, but I'd become rooted to the ground in horror. I swear to you on everything I hold dear, as I stood over those hundreds of broken chunks of mirror. I could see our reflections staring back at us from every angle, and in some of them, only some, I saw a dark figure standing behind us.